Today I want to show you how to work with really sticky dough without fighting it, and still how to get that really nice open crumb. I barely touch the dough in this recipe. I use dusting ones, scraper, oil in the container, so the dough basically moves itself without sticking to my hands. If you saw my sourdough hack video, it's the same concept. High hydration, gentle handling, and time doing its hard work. But this time we are using simple ciabatta recipe so everyone can practice sticky dough without worrying about starter. I am using 500 grams of flour in total, small amount of rye flour and yeast, some 00 pizza flour, and mostly a strong bread flour. Everything goes straight into the bowl. Flour, salt, yeast, and about half of the water. Starting with less water helps the dough mix more evenly and build structure faster. In your bowl, add the rest of the water when the dough starts to get together. I start mixing the dough with hook to bring everything together. And then I switch to the flat beater to really build the strong dough. And here's our dough after the final mix. It looks stretchy, smooth, and really strong. This is exactly what we need at this point. I use plastic container for proofing this dough and oil the container with my hands so the dough doesn't stick. With oiled hands, I lift the dough from the bowl and give it a nice stretch and drop it into the container. Now this dough will rest for about 30 minutes at room temperature. After 30 minutes, I do the first coil fold. With wet hands, I slide under the dough, lift it up, let it stretch, and fold it over itself from few sides. This builds the strength without kneading. "30 minutes later, I do the second and last fold. As you can see, the dough is puffier with small bubbles on top. My room temperature is about 75 Fahrenheit or 24 Celsius. Because it sticks to my hands, I use scraper to gently release the sides and fold it without popping bubbles. Then I cover it and move it into fridge overnight. In total, it spent 2.5 hours at 24 Celsius or 75 Fahrenheit before chilling. Next day, I let the dough warm up at room temperature for about 1 hour. My dough hasn't doubled, but there's a gentle rise, which is perfect. Next, I dust the top with flour and loosen the sides with a scraper. We will also need some flour on the table in generous amount. This flour will help us to avoid sticking to the table, and we'll use it during shaping. The dough releases almost by itself, which means the fermentation went really well, and the oil did its job for us. On a table, the dough feels very light and full of air. I try not to press from the top. Instead, I lift from underneath and gently pull it into more even rectangle. You can also let it sit for a minute so it relaxes and spreads on its own. Now let's shape it into little ciabattas. To cut the dough, I use a scraper, and I also dust it with flour to avoid sticking. Now I will divide it into long strips. Switching to a metal scraper so it cuts cleaner without breaking the dough. It's much better now. I cut this dough into 3 long strips and then gently stretch each one so they're a bit thinner and more even. Each strip gets cut into smaller pieces. Most strips become 2 pieces, and the thicker one I give one more. For the shaping, I fold the outer edges toward the center and press the sticky sides together. Shaping like this creates a little surface tension without overhandling the dough. And creating a bit of tension helps the dough keep its structure, so it rises upwards instead of spreading flat. It also promotes an even crumb and better oven spring. Next, I flour the couche or a towel and place the pieces seam side down and spaced apart. For larger pieces, since I gave them additional cut, I will do some extra little stitches to keep their shape. I then cover and let them rise for about 30 minutes. After 30 minutes, they're still a bit tight, so I give them another 30 minutes. Use your eyes and hands. If they still feel dense, they're not ready yet. Now they look ready. They look puffier, lighter, and when I press gently, the mark stays. Now I'll move them into a parchment paper, which will then make the job much easier to slide them onto a hot baking steel. I move each piece using scraper, and I also placing them on a parchment paper seam side up. That way the seam can open up slightly in the oven for more rustic and better texture. Additionally, I will also dust a top with a little flour so that it gets that classic ciabatta look. Preheat your oven at 480 Fahrenheit or 250 Celsius. And once loaded, add steam and lower the temperature. I bake them until they're a deep golden color and sound hollow on the bottom. Then I cool them on a rack so the crust stays crisp. Let's look inside. The crumb is open and airy. The crust is crisp, but it sprints back when I press on it. And aroma is amazing. From that little rye and the overnight rest, it gets really amazing flavor. I think this bread is perfect for sandwiches or just dipping in olive oil. And it's just delicious.